Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for welcoming me to your worship service. Can you hear me okay? Happy Easter. The most important reason that I'm here today is to celebrate you and all the work you've done, as Trudy and Diane so well explained and talked about. It's a cause for celebration, all those many acts. And, you know, when I was a little kid sitting on these steps like the children were this morning, we emphasized, of course, a lot of the things we've heard about through the centuries, loving our neighbor, caring for the poor, visiting the sick, and those are every bit of acts of mercy as they always have been. But these actions that you have taken as a church for the climate and for the earth are also acts of mercy. And if you are doing those acts in your home as part of your faith life, know that you are worshiping and living out your faith in every bit as vibrant a way as if you were feeding the hungry and caring for the poor. If you haven't joined this particular group of folks here at Hamline, I encourage you to reach out. And if you are doing acts only within your own family or in your business or wherever your life takes you, tell Trudy and Diane and the others. Let them know what you're doing. It's good to celebrate and share those things together. But this morning I want to invite you to go a little bit deeper, because the spiritual life is a balance between action and contemplation. And oftentimes when we're very active, especially with crises such as the climate change, we can get pressured outside, and we respond to actions from what's pressuring us from outside. And the invitation, I think, anytime we come to worship, and particularly within the climate crisis and climate change movement, is to remember the relationship that founds us and to move back to that place of contemplation from which we blossom out to action rather than responding to outside pressure. So let's reflect together on relationship with earth and resurrection today. And let me begin with this little story that a friend of mine told me. I've changed the names here. The 6-year-old grandson is riding in the back seat while grandma drives. They are talking about the grandson's aunt. She's a doctor, but more importantly, she's about to have a baby. And grandma explains that after Auntie gives birth, she will be home for 12 weeks, nursing and caring for the baby. Nursing? Asked the grandson. I thought Auntie was a doctor, not a nurse. Grandma backs up a little bit and explains, I don't mean the hospital kind of nurse. Nursing is when a mom feeds her baby with her milk. The grandson seems confused, so grandma goes a little farther. You know those two things women have on their chests? Yes, says the grandson. Those are breasts, and when a woman has a baby, they fill up with milk. Does the baby drink straight from those? The grandson wants to know. Yes, says grandma. Well, that's just weird, says the grandson. And a quiet settles in the car, and the dashes of the highway click by, and the grandmother kind of checks in the rearview mirror and thinks, maybe I went a little too far. And then the boy asks incredulously, well, what do women do with those things the rest of the time? It's funny, the gulf of understanding that a child has about the adult world, and it's particularly funny, this vast difference that a 6-year-old boy has between his 60-something-year-old grandmother. It's a gap the size of a Grand Canyon. But honestly, what the boy doesn't know about the adult female body is only the beginning of the gap. It's really much bigger than that. And so let's go into that canyon a little briefly. I promise we'll get back to earth and resurrection. Let's think about that woman in her 60s, this grandma. think about how much life she's lived. Because she was once a 6-year-old herself, with the excitements and slights and discoveries and loves and learnings of childhood. She went to slumber parties and sat in church and went apple picking. She had a crush so hard it hurt her teeth, and she went to prom, and she found subjects that excited her and that she was good at, and she also got a D+. And she had a best friend and a strange uncle and a dear Cocker Spaniel. And she fell in love in college and supported him through grad school. And they got married and lived a year in Barcelona on a grant of his. And she saw a film that made her cry she could never forget, and ate a meal in the Basque region she would always remember. And she helped nurse an aunt through cancer and had to watch her die. And she won a trophy in tennis and started a book club with a neighbor. And she had a baby girl, and a little while later, a baby boy. And she sewed Halloween costumes one year, but never again. And she fought a stupid decision by the city council, and she became an amateur astronomer and also a soccer mom. And she avoided a tempting, dangerous affair, and she didn't faint in the ambulance when her son broke his leg. And she watched him sprinting a year later as if it had never happened. And on and on and on, you get the feel, the span of this life, of any human life, of your grandmother's, of your own. Consider how impossible it is for this young grandson to conceive of all the milk his grandmother has given in her life and has received, and all that she is to him and is for him. The indigenous people of this land that we live in teach us that the earth is our mother and our grandmother. We're family. We're in relationship with her. And in our day, it is easy to see that we have desecrated that relationship. We see the unbelievable scale of toxicity and size of our pollution. We see the devastation we have caused to other creatures. We see the catastrophe of the climate crisis happening before our eyes. We see how ingrained our economics of extraction are, and how even the most enlightened of us still depends on that system, which we seem unable to undo or dismantle. As the wise Colette Pichon Battle says, it will break your heart if you don't cry deep, hard tears for the state of this planet and of all the people on it. You don't yet understand the problem. So it can feel that our human race is like a spoiled little 6-year-old boy who just wants from his grandmother what he decides he wants, his own selfish wants. But today, in Eastertide, let's set that aside. Let's don't look at our naive side of this relationship with Grandmother Earth. Let's look at her, what she does, what she offers. Notice that despite that great gap in our understanding, we're still her grandchildren. We're made from her. We belong to her. And how ready she is to have us back, to hold us and feed us if we will come to her on her terms. Notice how all of her creatures and her systems seek balance and healing, how ready they are to heal if we let them. Notice how even when we live contrary to her, her natural systems keep trying to turn out abundance. In fact, some of the reasons that we were so slow to understand the climate crisis is because their huge oceans were sucking up all that CO2 and greenhouse gases we put in the atmosphere for so long. Notice how eager she is for us to change and to grow. To Christians, I think this means that the earth is a symbol of God's love. Maybe much more than that. It's a living, breathing sacrament of the love of God, the love described in our scriptures. The earth is the relationship, the love, and we cannot leave it. And the story we tell of Jesus of Nazareth is that he lived this love. Jesus is not a cartoonish grandmother full of sugar lumps and soft laps. He gets angry at times with his followers. He calls them up short. He rebukes those who act against God's love. He calls us to the good life, but it's not always the easy life. And yet, look at his gentleness and his forbearance in this story today. These disciples out fishing in the morning, they all deserted him at night. And as he was arrested, they fled. And as he was flogged and executed, they hid. And he comes and finds them. He helps them pull in a huge, big catch of fish. He makes them breakfast on the beach. Can we be like Peter? Can we be so happy to see our grandmother there that we leap out of the boat and go swim to her? And then can we mature in our relationship with her? Can we humans come to see the larger, longer life of Grandmother Earth? And can we mature in that love and come into harmony with it so that we are living more in the earth, more in that love, more in that resurrection? Yes, do you hear me mixing all these things together? God's love, the earth, Jesus' resurrection. Theologically, maybe I'm on some shaky ground, but I don't do it by accident. I think those things are completely mixed together in God. I don't think we can separate them. I think they lead us to the same end experience of letting go of worry, of not enough, of letting go of worry of our security, of letting go of the anxiety of death. People of Hamline United Methodist Church, keep doing those acts of mercy with the earth. From planting trees to installing solar panels to helping a whole community of Baiwala in Sierra Leone live a more abundant life. Thank you for doing those things. Thank you so much. May you always know your grandmother is there for you and that she is the one in the driver's seat.